Okay, I'm making this short video to show a concept that I'm working on. This is the idea is that I want to make a model of a Klingon Shuttlecraft that would be from the original series. So to do this, I put myself in the mindset that I worked for Desilu Studios. This is a block out model. I looked at how they made the Galileo 7 shuttlecraft, and I figured, like in the fourth season of Star Trek, or if they had an episode where they had a shuttlecraft with the Klingons, that they would use a similar approach to how they did the Galileo 7. That they would take basically the shape of the engines that's on the ship. So I kind of copied the engine nacelles here, you can see. I copied the basic shape and I put landing pads on them. The Galileo 7, they put landing pads up on the front of the engine nacelles, and they're sheet metal tubing. And what they come to find out is that the pads on the front held the front of the ship prop up, but the back end wasn't supported. So they actually went to a machine shop and they had them make that tail pad that holds the back end off the ground, and with the Galileo design, the back end, about this much of the back end of that ship is supposed to be kind of like a miniature engine room, and plus the impulse engines are right on the back here. What I am conjecturing is that the Klingons would want a bigger shuttlecraft. They would want to carry about 12 people. The Galileo was made to fit 7. They did a really good job with it, with plywood, metal framing, and I think they did some fiberglass and some sheet metal, but they didn't have a big budget. So I'm not sure. I probably need to look into it. I'm thinking on the Galileo that they more or less, I think they built the filming prop first. And back in the 60s, on the filming prop of the Galileo, they actually made these side panels to where they could be removed, because the cameras were really huge. They're, as big as a car. So if you can imagine this thing sitting on a floor somewhere and they wanted to film in here, so they would take off like the side here, they'd roll the camera up here, and they would actually script it, from what I understand, where the actors that were saying everything that are from the right hand view, they would say all of their lines with the camera, and then they would put that side back on and they would roll around this other side here and they would film them saying their lines from that side. And then they also, I think the front actually came off too. They had part of it where they'd take the front end off so they could have the camera in front of them, and they'd have it close enough to where basically it was in the window area, and they would say lines, stuff like that. I also think, I'm not sure, but I think either part of the roof or the roof come off of the original prop too. What was left of that filming prop, or I'm not sure if they had 2 or whatnot, ended up kind of like in a junkyard, and then personal people the last few years have bought it and restored it, and I think they've restored it to where either the walls don't come off, or either that, or that was just one that they literally used setting in the set, and they would go in and go out. So I don't know if they filmed out of the same one or not. But the what I gathered is that they kind of used the idea of kind of building a boat hull, like an upside down boat hull. And then they did add more details. They put kind of curl rails up on top of it and stuff like that. And this per se isn't really finished. This is just kind of what I've come up with. This would be easy to build out of plywood and framing. The engines probably in 1968, if they were to build these overlong Klingon looking nacelles, they would probably use wood framing and fiberglass. You could build this out of sheet metal, but you would have to have pretty good sheet metal shop, which would start running into money, and I don't think they would have a big budget to... They would probably have less money to make something like this than they did to make the Galileo, because one of the reasons they made the Galileo full size was so they could use it. And this is kind of I think they were talking about the ship shuttle concept and idea before they had kind of come up with the transporter thing. So anyways, I don't think if they were going to make this, let's say for one episode, let's say they filmed the 4th season, and they said, hey, we need to come up with we want to do a show where, say, the Klingons and the Federation are having negotiations or whatnot, and the Klingons are going to come over to the Enterprise or whatever, so they come over with a shuttlecraft, or they meet down on the planet on a shuttlecraft or something like that. So the conditions I set on myself for starting this project, like I said, was actually I seen some people building some 1/350 scale models of the Katinga, which is more or less the motion picture upgraded D7. And believe it or not, the dimensions of the Katinga and the D7 are dissimilar enough that it's kind of like even the original Enterprise, the TOS Enterprise. If you take that and then you look at what they were making for Phase 2, they basically took the original series Enterprise and they put a torpedo tube on its dorsal neck and kind of changed the shape of that a little bit, and then they put the kind of the newer looking motion picture engines on it, and they angled in those pylons to make it look like it has better structural support. But other than that, the ship was basically the same ship. But by the time they actually come out with the motion picture, they had changed it enough to where it was larger, it's larger dimensions. And, you know, they argue in the storyline it's the same ship. But it's enough different that they could have basically just built new starships from that design, you know, until they come up with the Excelsior or whatnot. So anyways, again, I need to design forward basically windows on this, and possibly what I'm thinking about doing is adding a little bit of side window here. And on the Galileo, it was interesting because they had the 3 what you'd call the viewport windows, and they had what do you call them? Vision blockers. They had solid window blocks to block it, And I think they were saying like, so if they were flying close to a star or something and the light was, blinding, they could shut the solid views. In the Doomsday Machine, they kind of showed it to where they had navigational panels inside where they could fly just with the navigational panels. And anyways, I was already even kind of tweaking this out. I did actually have these sides here going straight up, basically, but it looked so much like a box that I decided to lean them in a little bit. And okay, so the other idea too, again, if this is a Klingon shuttlecraft from the original series, all we know about the Klingons at this point in time is kind of like that they looked like they were Hispanic banditos from Mexico with Fu Manchu mustaches, kind of, or they made their skin a little darker. Wasn't anything like the Next Generation or beyond. You didn't have black Klingons and black Vulcans yet. You did have some Chinese Vulcans in the motion picture and some Asian Vulcans in the motion picture and stuff like that. And then, of course, when they went up into Voyager and Deep Space Nine and stuff like that, they kind of, and I'm not talking about like Mr. Worf. Mr. Worf is an African American, playing a Klingon, but he's not per se, or really, he's not really like a black Klingon. And later on, they did actually have, basically Klingons and Vulcans that were, Tuvok, of course, is a prime example, but they also did that with Klingons. They started integrating kind of like that. Even the alien races had, different kind of like ethnicities in the races. But going back to this, so I'm putting myself in the position that I'm a model builder, or I am Matt Jeffries, or I work for and or with Matt Jeffries, and they basically said, hey, we want to do an episode and we need a design for a Klingon shuttlecraft. And if I was a modeler and I wasn't Mr. Jeffries himself, my first question would probably be like, oh, well, like how much money do we have to design this thing? Which the answer would be probably not a lot. So, and they usually were in they were usually in a time crunch on these kind of things. Like when they made the Botany Bay, they went out and bought a model of a submarine, and they built that middle section around it. That literally was a model of a submarine when they came up with that model. So depending on the show and the budget, if they thought that maybe they were going to film possibly several episodes of this, then they would probably want to build a full-size prop. If they didn't think they were going to film a lot of episodes, if they were just going to film one episode, they would probably make a model like this in about I'm not sure what that, I think it was 1/24 scale for the Galileo, and I think they literally had a 1/24 scale model of the Enterprise's shuttle bay. So I could see them building, if that's the scale, like I said, I probably need to research. I think I could find that out too. But if my memory serves me right, the filming model that they used against the blue screen of the Galileo 7, and or they also redecaled it for shots for Starbase 1. I think it was 1/24 scale. The actual what you would call like the hero filming model. I don't think AMT had come out with the models right away, and then they weren't exactly the same. There was like some slight discrepancies between the models they had of the shuttles and the actual prop that they used. and or the model, the large model that they made for the blue screen filming. Now, so I'm picturing this. I got to build this thing, and I got to build it in 1/24 scale. And there's usually two approaches to this kind of modeling. If you're talking about modeling for Star Wars, modeling for Star Trek in the 60s and the early 70s. I could just do like this, like I come up with this shape and this design, I blocked it out, and then I scale it to the people. I basically figure out like I could take this right quick. Let's see, let's go to this go, and we'll go to face mode. So if I shift, so if I take these faces right here, delete them, then you can see this is just, let's take these back two off too. Okay, so I opened up the top of this, and you can see at this point that this model is just a shell. I have no interior in here. But I might have to take and open this thing up and actually figure out where the floor is going to go. And unlike the Galileo 7, well, actually the Galileo 7, I'm sure they had a subfloor too. If it would have been a real shuttle, it probably would have had some room under the floor with circuits and this and this and this. But like I was pointing out, is a certain amount of the back part of the Galileo 7. Engineers can look in there, kind of a thing. But what I would think, in a sense, with the Klingons being a spacefaring race for longer than what I'm kind of guessing at what they would possibly do is that they would probably have, let's go to lines, they would probably, let's do this, they would probably put in a floorboard, and they would probably have room under here, because one, like I said, this shuttle's bigger than the Galileo 7, but it's not really per se twice the size. It's just larger. So let's hit A, let's go this line and this line, and let's put in, let's run a line here and run a line here. I'm just doing this for conjecturing. Like I said, let's run one here. Let's run one here. Okay. Oh, and I'm almost up on 20 minutes. Okay, so now let's go to solid mode. Oh, oops. I see what happened. I messed up. Let's go back to faces. Let's delete that face. Let's go back to lines. And then I'll get to the point, and then I'll probably cut this off and make it into two parts, so you don't have to sit there and listen to me talk for an hour about this thing. Or if you want to, you can listen to me for an hour over like 3 sections. I try to keep these at 20 minutes, or maybe 30 maximum. I don't like them running into an hour, and I can get pretty windy, so try to watch them. So okay, so now we got a floor. So now we can go back. We can go back to object mode. Anyways, okay, so if you look in here, you got this floor. So everything below this line here is a nice roomy under compartment where you could put panels in here, and to where you could do maintenance or storage areas. I'm not sure about the seating arrangement per se yet, but my concept I'm thinking is that you have like a pilot, in a sense, a pilot and a navigator slash. They're both pilot navigators kind of a thing. You have two people that can fly this up in the front, kind of like in the Galileo. You have your windows, your portholes, your screens, whatever, and then I'd probably do them the same way where you could like open, close them, kind of a thing. But you would think, and this is, of course, this is kind of projecting forward. You would think kind of that they might do like they do in the spaceships, to where you don't honestly have a window there. What you have is almost like they're looking through a screen, so that it would protect them from light sources, ultraviolet and stuff. It's more or less like they're looking through a screen, and they could zoom and whatnot. But anyways, like I said, if this is just for one episode, then you might not even have to show the inside of this, or you might just have to have enough of an interior, or they might would set this back far enough and have, like Kirk and them, they could open the shuttle bay doors, and this thing would be sitting here with the Klingons have already climbed out. And the other idea I had as a concept, kind of, more or less, is that you would put a shape on here and a shape on here, and those would be, or even maybe four, and those would be your impulse engines. Your impulse engines would actually work more off the side, and then this back end would come down as a ramp. So your commander, which I'm thinking you'd have your pilot navigator, and you'd have a center seat here, and that's where your captain or your shuttle command, whoever is your top officer in charge, would be sitting in here. They'd kind of be in here like the Cylons in their Cylon ship. You'd have the 1 and the 2 and then the 3, and then you would have like 8 more. So you'd have 11. It would be 11-person shuttle, or 13, depending on, like I said, I want it to be bigger, but I don't want it to be so much huger, because I think the Klingons would, if they really wanted to make like troop transports, they would make an even bigger shuttle where they would stuff 20 or 30 guys in there, where they're standing up like in a bus, where they'd fly down and the guys are literally standing in there with the, hanging onto a hook or a bar or something. So this is actually meant to be more of a shuttlecraft. Another thing that I thought of doing, except for I don't think they would have done it in the original series, is the Warriors being Klingons. It's kind of like I'm tempted to throw some cannons on this, or some laser cannons on this. But I think that would be more like the motion picture era. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to and why is my file not working? Oh, it's locking up. Okay, let's try it. There we go. I'm going to open a different file. Here's my phase 2 file. Okay, so I basically took the same body, and this is kind of funny, because in this one, I'll just show you a quick glimpse of this, and then we'll maybe do another video on this. This is kind of my concept for the motion picture era. I think by the time you get into the motion picture era, and you can see it's basically, let's put this down here. Let's get this widget in the center. So basically the same shuttle body, same. It's basically the same one, but I put the engines up, and I figure by the motion picture that they would have hydraulic landing feet, and that they could have their doors. And unlike the Galileo 7, I want doors kind of like on both sides of this. I don't want it. And you can see I altered the shape a little bit, but I still want to alter it a little bit more because by this time we're starting to get a little more fancy. You know, you got more money. You're up in the 70s. They decided Klingons' average height is more like 6'5" instead of 6. You know, like the augmented Klingons that we find out about. But at the same time, even looking at the next generation, sometimes the shuttles were kind of cheesy. You know, it was like they were somewhat believable, but yet they were still so. Sometimes the little one-man shuttles and stuff on the next generation, they just looked toyish to me. They didn't really look like that they were a spaceship. They looked like they were, you know, a toy. And I think part of that was also supposed to reflect that they got so, you know, standardized in building them that they were like a car off of a car lot, instead of in the old Star Trek where they were more like, they were supposed to look like something that had been around a while, but yet they still kind of had the experimental NASA-like feeling. So anyways, like I said, I come up with this, and this is another block concept. I could still shape this, but you can tell I altered the geometry. In 17, stealthy kind of look, especially the big Klingon ships don't per se really look like this, but I think it makes the shuttle look good, because this would basically be, like I said, this would be, give or take, this would be what has got improved off of the original series design that I did. And I would make the window shape kind of smaller. You can kind of see this area in here. Let's see. So if you take, for instance, whoopsie. Oh, I gotta go to face. It's like, why isn't it? So if you take this face, this face, this face, and this face, this would kind of be more of like the view area in here on this one. And I would take this here, and let's see, we could raise this up a little bit, give it more of a, even more of a F-117 look per se, you know, stuff like that. So, and then like I said, I need to engineer in. So I'm going to raise these a little bit. So there's a lot we could do with this design here. So, and I do like the way it looks, but I don't think in 1968 anybody would have come up with something like this. Like I said, this is 79 here. This is definitely the motion picture phase 2 era here. And this one in the motion picture, since they kind of were getting towards to the point where they were going to do the original Romulan Bird of Prey, this one you could probably put some you know, plasma cannons on it or stuff like that. But as long as they're, you know, you still don't want them in the way of the doors, but you could put them on top maybe, or you could hang a couple kind of here, or you could actually even have them kind of sitting out here onto the side in the middle here. And again, like I said, I would really like, or, you know, and then even what would be kind of neat about this is you could actually make, let's go back to these, you could probably make like these whole sides open, kind of like as a doorway, you know. This could flop down, so it would be, on the original series one, it would be kind of like the Galileo 7. You'd have more of a door that opens, like they slide open from the side and you can climb out. But this thing, you could actually have it like pop open, you know, like maybe this one pop down and this one pop up. And then still, you could still have your, you could still have this where this and this and this and this. This could pop down to the ground. These could open up, so you could have your ramp. So you would have to fit the people in there to where it's practical for them to walk out of this thing. So like I said, they would be bigger than the Galileo 7. So I'm going to have to definitely open them up and make, for me, being the modeler, like I said, because you can make this for the show and you can fly it around, and you can film it, and you can never do it. And then if it was more of a permanent thing, you definitely would want to design it as a full-size prop and then model down off of that. But I think using a little bit of artistic license, and or since I've modeled since I was 5 years old, I think the smart thing would be open this thing up, make your floor plan, put in your consoles and your chairs. And I 3D model characters, so I could 3D model some 6'5" characters and set them in here and stand them up and stuff like that. And if I have to alter the dimensions of the ship to make it work, I can definitely do that. So I'm going to leave off with that right now. I'll give you a little profile shot here. And let's see, that's the top. Let's go to the side, front, back, and I think I spun them around enough for the angle. And I'm going to leave off with there, and I plan to make some more videos as I start detailing these in and working out the whatnots on them, and with the, like I said, with the mentality, because the mentality on this one is this is the motion picture era / or just beyond that, or the motion pictures era. So, and I might greeble up these engines more, or make these would be the ones you would want to cut out, for, light the engines up, put green lights in them or something. Definitely with the motion picture, because these at the moment are just the same nacelles that you've seen on the original series one, which, like I said, I think in the original series they wouldn't have lit them, but on this one you could light the engines, you could put on marker lights. Like I said, you could design some Klingon looking phase cannons. You definitely could put some landing pads and or hatches to where I could make retractable landing gear instead of just having the pads like I think they would have used on the original series one. So anyways, throw me a comment, let me know what you think, and I'm going to sign out, and we'll see you on the next video.